resource consumption process of the threads. Okay, yeah. Resource consumption. Basically, a process requires more resource than threads. Uh, as threads are very, I mean, lightweight process, it requires less resource. They basically does some little computations. And coming to dependency, um, as we know, every process is independent of each other. But a thread is a part of process, so they are dependent on each other. Data and code sharing. Here also, each process will have independent data segment and code segment. Whereas threads can share the same data segment, code segment, etc. with its peer threads. And treatment by OS. All different processes are treated separately by OS, right? But a thread is treated as a single, I mean, every thread is dependent on other threads. So it is the entire, I mean, the group of threads are treated as single one, single program by the OS. And time for creation. For a process, it requires more time to create, whereas thread requires less time to create by the OS. Okay. Creation in the sense the OS needs to create this data segment, code segment, registers, etc. For that, OS requires more time, and for threads, it takes very less time by the OS. Okay, next one. Next topic is inter-process communication. Any doubts between threads and process? Okay. Inter-process communication. As the word itself says, it is the communication between two processes. Okay. Um, for example, I mean, it is like, for example, if we take, I mean, communication between two systems in a network, I mean, internet. There we require this inter-process communication. Okay. Um, Here, process is nothing but, as you know, it may run on a single or multiple computers. Okay. Um, Communication is nothing but the data need to be transferred between two computers when they are connected in a network. Mm, Here, this inter-process communication can be two types. First one is unicast, that is, it is not affected by the execution of other process. It is independent of each other. For example, this is the thing if we take in our system, I mean, individual system like if we open two programs like WhatsApp or Word document or something, there we don't need the communication between the two programs. It is independent. Okay. The other one is multicast. That is, one is affected by the one execution of one process is affected by the other process. Okay. This is just a definition. Other, okay. The definition of IPC, inter-process communication, is as follows. It is a set of programming interface which allows programmer to coordinate activities among various processes which can run concurrently in an OS. Um, this interface in the OS helps to coordinate between activities which are run by a single program. Okay. It also allows to handle many user requests at the same time. Okay. Next page. Why we need inter-process communication is we need to share information, resource, and the computational speed up needs to be increased. And also, um, each process need to give a priority. We need to give priority. I mean, the CPU executes the process in terms of priority given by the OS. Okay. It also helps OS to communicate with the process and synchronize their action. The main use of IPC is first one is information sharing, second, resource sharing. The computational speed up will be increased. Based on the priority, our process will be executed, and it also helps in synchronization and communication between the processes. These are the main uses of IPC. We have different approaches for IPC, inter-process communication. The first one is pipes, message queues, FIFO, shared memory, message passing, direct communication, and indirect communication. First one is pipes. It is basically used between two related processes, and this is also half duplex method. Okay, only here, I mean, uh, process A can only communicate with B, but process B cannot communicate with A. This is half duplex. Okay. The best example is, for example, if we take our WhatsApp, some groups will be there where admins can only post the messages. So, in such a situation, the participants cannot post the messages. That is an example of pipes. Okay. Basically, it is pipe is nothing but it is communication between two related processes, and it is a half duplex. Second one, message passing. Yeah, message passing. Okay. It is a mechanism to communicate and synchronize between processes. It is a full duplex. Here, sender is executing a process A, and receiver is executing process B. Here, uh, sender A can send a message, and also the receiver can acknowledge anything to the sender A. Sender, process A. Here, message size can be fixed or variable. Okay. Here, both sender and receive, process A and process B can communicate simultaneously. Mm. Here, the message type can be send off message and destination address, and receiver can be received of message and the for which the from which the message has come, that host host will be address of the host. This is the message passing. And message queue. The word itself says queue, in the sense it's in a queue. Basically, we'll store. Uh, I mean, it is a kind of array. Will in C we have queues, no? In such in queue we'll store list of messages. Okay, and it is first in first out. Okay, the process which has been first uh, enters the kernel will be executed first. This offers communication between single or multiple process with full duplex capacity. Message queue is nothing but it is a linked list of messages stored within the kernel. Okay, and also it offers communication between single or multiple processes with full duplex capacity. Okay. This is message queue is also full duplex mode. And next one is direct communication. Direct communication is also similar to message passing. Here, uh, we need to name to to the process. I mean, if we are sending a message, we need to uh, name the sender. Here, the sender is A, and message, whatever the message is passed, that message um, will be inserted in this format. And receive um, to I mean B is the sender. Here, send of A in the sense A is the destination and receive of B, and B is the sender. I mean, if it is if A needs to acknowledged by the B, we need to insert this message. In this, a link is established between communicating process. For any communication, we need a link, physical link, right? So a link is established between sender and receiver. Here only one dedicated link will be established. It is similar to connection oriented process, like for example in computer networks. A dedicated link will be established between sender and receiver. This is the direct communication. In direct communication, we'll have sender and receiver, and it should name each other explicitly. Okay. A message is being sent to A. Here, send of A comma message is a message is being sent to A, and receive of B in the sense B is the sender and A is the receiver here. Okay. A dedicated link will be established between A and B here. And coming to indirect communication, we'll have some intermediate node between sender and receiver here. Here, process A is communicating with the process B through a mailbox. Here, whatever message is being sent by process A, it is received by the mailbox, and the mailbox in turn sends the message to the destination. And similarly, if process B wants to send a message, uh, this again this the whatever the message is being sent by process B is sent to mailbox, and the mailbox here sends the message to that particular process. For example, where in real time, if we take, if we make a call to some other number, our connection will not be directly established between, I mean, between here sender and receiver. It will be through a cell tower. Okay, this can be an example of indirect communication. Here, each pair of processes share several communication links. For establishing the connection, between two cell phones, mobile phones, um, it can go through several towers. So the feasible communication will be allotted to us. Mm. In indirect communication, uh, both processes will not be directly connected. They are connected through some intermediary point, that is indirect communication. And the next the next example of IPC is shared memory. If this in this shared memory, two or more processes will share a memory block. Okay, here process A is accessing some memory, this and process B is also accessing the same memory. In such a situation, in order to avoid a clash between the process A and process A gives a note to process B that it is using some resource in that memory location. Then process B will use other resource which is not being used by process A. This is also inter-process communication. Okay. And coming to FIFO. FIFO is communication between two unrelated processes. Coming to, but if we take pipes is communication between two related processes. But whereas FIFO, it is a communication between two unrelated processes. It is also a full duplex. That is, the communication between the sender and receiver will be simultaneously. This is the end of IPC, various techniques in IPC, inter-process communications. And the next topic is deadlocks. It is similar to OS only. Um, Deadlock is nothing but, for example, here process 1 is assigned a resource 1 and process 2 is assigned resource 2. For process 1 to complete its execution, it also needs resource 2. Whereas for process, so it will be waiting for the resource, but it is being used by process 2. Whereas process 2 is waiting for resource 1 for completion of its execution. So it will continue for prolonged period. It cannot be stopped. So this task of process 1 and process 2 will not be completed. This is the situation where deadlocks happen. Okay, a process is said to be in deadlock state, which is, if it is waiting for an event that will not occur. Uh, Here, process 2 is continuously waiting for resource 1, which is being locked by process 1. So it continues for prolonged period and it will not be stopped. So the system gets into hang. That's why it is called deadlock. This it involves several processes and leads to termination of a program. Um, we'll see the situations where deadlock happens. First one is process must claim exclusive access to resources. If here, for example, P1 is accessing resource 1 and P2, uh, it requests for resource 1, then OS should not give access to resource 1. Okay. And the second one is hold and wait. For example, uh, here process here process 1, the process is holding one resource R1 and waiting for the resource R2. This also should not happen because it leads to deadlock. Okay. If R2 is, in case R2 is R2 is being used by other process. So P1 continuously waits for R2. It just holds the R1 and it is waiting for R2. And third one is no preemption. That is, um, for example, some processes will hold some resources, but they are not used by the process. So OS should gain. Those resources should be released by the processes. If if process holds those resources, they may not be available to other processes. So no preemption in the sense OS will not get hold of those resources from the process. In such a situation also, deadlock there is a chance for deadlock. And the fourth one is circular chain. That is, here process A holds some resources and it is waiting for the resources from to be relieved by process B. And process B is holding some resources and waiting for the process C to relieve some other resources. And here C is also having some resources. In order to complete its execution, it needs some resources from D. And D in turn waits for A to release resources. So this is a circular chain. It continues. It continues for a prolonged time. So it is called circular wait. One is waiting for the other process in a chain. In this situation also, deadlock, there is a chance of deadlock. So how can we prevent deadlock? Here are some of the methods. By eliminating the above conditions, we can prevent the deadlock. So how can we eliminate these? Uh, I mean, how can we eliminate these conditions? We'll see. Eliminating mutual exclusion. Okay. How can we eliminate mutual exclusion is we only one process need to be given access to the resource. Okay. Uh, if process there are for example, if we have P1 and P2 process, P1 is is holding some resource R1, um, and P2 requested for R1. We the system need to wait until P1 completes its execution. Okay. It is not possible to dissatisfy the mutex because some resources such as the tape driver and printer are inherently non-shareable. For example, if we take printer, which is being used by some process, we other process also request for printer. We should not stop. I mean, we should not stop the first process access to the printer until that process completes its task. Okay. The second one is eliminating hold and wait. How can we eliminate it? For example, process P1 process is holding some resources and waiting for other resources to complete its execution. Here, we'll allocate all the resources required for a process to complete its execution. Then only, um, after allocation only, the process execution will be started by the CPU. Okay. In this way, we'll eliminate hold and wait. We'll allocate all the resources required by a process to complete its execution. After that, only the start of its execution happens. In such a way, here, then process need not wait for the resources to complete its execution. Eliminate no preemption. No, how can we eliminate it? Um, we need to get hold of the resources by the OS which are not required by some processes. That is, some process will hold some resources, but they are not in use by them. OS will monitor those kind of process which are not using the resources, and it will get, I mean, it will make a process to release those resources so that it can be available to to other processes. Okay. And coming to circular weight, how can we eliminate it? Um, Here, each process will be given some numerical number, and the for example, there are four processes, and each and they are assigned numbers with 1 to 4. The process can be executed in the increasing or decreasing order of the numbering. It is similar to priority. I mean, the process which have been first came into queue will be executed first, like that. The ordering, the numbering will be given to each process, and the those will be executed in increasing or decreasing number. For example, if a process P1 asks for resource R5, next time if P1 asks for R1, R3, which is less than R5, will not be granted. Because here, in this example, he's saying that P1 asks for resource R5, that is, I mean, R5, and if it is asked for R1, R3, these R3, the number given to resource R1 and R3 are less than R5. So the OS will not give, give chance to P1 for R1 and R3. In that way, circular weight can be eliminated by the OS. Okay. Any doubts? Okay. We also have a algorithm to avoid this deadlock. That is Banker's algorithm. Here, this algorithm does is it tests all the requests made by the process for the resource, and if it is in the safe state, the system will execute that process. In this algorithm, this is a resource allocation algorithm because deadlock happens only a particular resource is not available to a process. So this is the resource allocation algorithm. Here, this algorithm calculates all the all the requests made by a process. Then, if it is in the safe state, the system will start execution of that particular process. If it is not in safe state, it will not execute the process. If system remains in the safe state after granting the resources, it allows the request for resources. Otherwise, it doesn't. Okay, this is the basic concept in Banker's algorithm. Okay, first it can. I mean, it tests all the resources required by the process by calculating the safe state of the system. If the system is in safe state, it only grants those resources for that particular process and it executes that process. Otherwise, it will halt the execution of a particular process. If system is not in safe state after allocating those particular resources to a process, then it will not execute the process. That is the Banker's algorithm. The input for the Banker's algorithm is maximum need of resources by each process, currently allocated resources by each process, maximum free available resources by the system. The inputs of Banker's algorithm is first one is uh, maximum resources needed by a process. Second one, uh, allocated resources by each process. Third one is maximum free available resources by system. These are the three inputs of Banker's algorithm. The okay, the request will be granted only if the request made by process is less than or equal to maximum need to that process. And the second one is if the request made by process is less than or equal to freely available resources in the system. These are the two conditions where the system will be in safe state. The first one is request made by process is less than or equal to maximum need of the process, and if the second one is request made by process is less than or equal to freely available resources in the system. The the algorithm compares with this maximum numbers. The first one is um, eh, I mean the first one is request made by process is less than or equal to maximum need to that process, and the second is uh, the requested resources by a process is equal to freely available resources in the system. These are the two conditions where it will calculate the safe state of the system. Okay. In the next class, we'll see Banker's algorithm in detail. This is the end of the class. Anyone have doubts? Okay. Um, okay. Thank you, Madhvi. Basically, these are all concepts which you might already have studied in OS. This uh, these are similar to that only. Okay. Tomorrow we'll see Banker's algorithm in detail. Okay. Thank you. Take care. Bye.